This is Listen Lakeland, the show that keeps you up to date on all the things that make our city a great place to live, work, and play. Today's host is a former hospital administrator and currently a healthcare consultant in operations, strategy, and facility planning. She's also served on a number of city and nonprofit agency boards in the Lakeland and Tampa Bay area, including InnerAct Alliance, and she's currently the chair of Lakeland Vision. Please welcome your host, Carole Philipson.
Welcome to the good life.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Carole Philipson, and it's great to be hosting this month's episode of Listen Lakeland. This show is an extension of Lakeland Vision. For over 2 decades, Lakeland Vision has been a voice for the citizens of Lakeland, working with community stakeholders to create a bright future for our city. Today on Listen Lakeland, we have with us Angie Ellison, the Executive Director of InnerAct Alliance. She's been Executive Director since 2001 and has grown the agency from a budget of $200,000 to over $1 million and assisted in establishing drug prevention coalitions for youth and adults. She's also added a division of evidence-based educators and established social norms marketing campaigns for youth and adults. But even more, she added Level 2 prevention to agency licensure, and they received accreditation by the Joint Commission in 2015, a big achievement for the agency. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us some about the history of InnerAct Alliance.
Okay, well, they basically started in the 80s when Nancy Reagan had a platform for drug prevention. And what they did was set up what are called prides all across the country, and they had conventions and worked on the problem. And then Governor at the time, Bob Graham, came along and invited the activists from all of the communities in Florida to get together and kind of charged them with forming groups to work on their problem locally.
So they formed agencies, or?
At the time, they were called Prides, so ours was Pride of Lakeland. There was a Pride of Winter Haven. There was lots of them. And it was kind of an old version of what is today called a coalition. A lot more science has been added to it, but at the time, it was, kind of sit around the table and what resources do we have here in the community to do things. So there was a march, actually, every October during Red Ribbon Month, and they actually closed down South Florida, which they would never do today. And, I think started at the Civic Center and went through Lakeland and had a big rally. And we still have that rally today, but obviously the march is different, and now we have a run. And there's just lots of different ways that things have progressed since then. But basically, they worked with not a lot of money. What I understand is they met the YMCA, a handful of concerned citizens, and passed the hat for the little electric bill that they had to pay for one office at the Y. But eventually they got larger and were able to have their own office and a part-time person. And it was founded by Kay McConnell. That's who the governor called up from Lakeland. And some people, know Kay. And she was really very active with our agency until they retired to the mountains in North Carolina around 2010. But she was a 6th grade teacher at Southwest Junior High then, and had a couple of her students overdose in her homeroom classroom. So she just got right away very interested in what kind of education is there for kids and what can we do to make this problem better. Of course, she'd gone to high school and college in the 60s and 70s, so she knew a little bit about how the culture was changing. But that became her passion and her mission for the rest of her life. So we were very lucky to have her as our founder. And then around the 90s, the prides were kind of starting to fade away, and there wasn't as much support nationally. So we formed the Drug Prevention Resource Center, and became licensed by the state of Florida through the Department of Children and Families to be the provider in this region, which is Polk Highlands and Hardy County.
And that's the name many people here in Lakeland
still remember. Absolutely. And so a lot of times I'll say InnerAct Alliance, formerly Drug Prevention Resource Center. It's kind of like Prince, you know. We're just going to still say our name.
How did we get to InnerAct Alliance from drug prevention?
Well, in 2010, our board was doing a survey really more about how well we were known in the community and how well we were utilized and what if people knew what we did. And because drug was our first name, a lot of people thought we were rehab. So that discovery led to the idea that we really needed to rebrand. Branding these days happens almost every 5 to 10 years, or rebranding, so it's kind of a trend. So we had a board member and a local ad agency that helped us to go through the process of picking a name, which was kind of fun. And we came up with, or the board kind of finalized on InnerAct Alliance. And the reason for it was we really want to convey that we were a partnership in the community. So thus Alliance and InnerAct, but InnerAct is spelled INNERACT without the T, the extra T. So we wanted to say, and I say often when I introduce ourselves, is that we're an interaction in the community, but we're also trying to educate kids especially, but families and others, that this is an inner act. This is something you gather the information and you make the choice to go with a healthy lifestyle or unhealthy one, and risky behaviors or more healthy choices. So we thought that it was kind of the perfect combination of the partnership part, but also the individual part.
So can you tell us the mission?
Sure. InnerAct is the official mission is to reduce the abuse and underage use of harmful substances, along with involvement in other risky behaviors, through community awareness and involvement, prevention education, economic support, and leadership development. And I know that's a mouthful, but we really want folks to understand our more broad approach. A lot of agencies are in a silo where they can only talk about tobacco, or they can only go after fentanyl, or whatever the kind of trendy drug is that's got people concerned. And we have a broader approach.
So what risky behaviors are we talking about?
Bullying, anger management is another area that we've been involved in. And those teachers that we talked about that are going into the schools, or we will talk about, they're not just talking about substances, and they certainly aren't talking about substances with a kindergartner or a first grader. So what we need to do is build the better child. So their ability to succeed in school, their ability to communicate, their ability to be tolerant of one another, all of those kinds of social emotional skills is what prevents someone from becoming a user and especially an addict down the road. So we're really trying to do that.
So where does the education start in the schools? Where do you go in, at what grade level?
Really, you can be any grade. We would love to be in every grade, but what we have done is focus on the grade levels where there's a transition just happening or about to happen. So when you go from 5th to 6th grade, statistically, most kids in Polk County are going to be offered a gateway drug around 11 and a half. So that's right there between 5th and 6th grade. Then we go ahead and do some booster stuff in 7th grade, and then we do 9th grade. So 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 9th are those transition years that we really, really focus on. But if you ask us to do preschool or you asked us to do any grade level, we would be glad to do it. And there's lots of things that we can do to, if not give them a 6 to 10 week program because there's not enough people or not enough money, we can still come and do a one-time thing or something that we can leave with your teacher to do continuous things. We try to give them writing prompts and things like that they can use throughout their kind of typical education that still allows the child to educate themselves and understand some substance abuse issues.
So does the school system or a particular class ask you to come in? How does that happen?
The school system has approved us, and so we work very closely with the Mark Wilcox Center, which is kind of the substance abuse and social emotional mental health arm of the school system. So we're approved through them, and then we send out lots of emails and messages and try to connect with folks that we have relationships with to allow us in the schools. It's a tough thing. Schools are under a lot of pressure to perform on tests, and we're asking for classroom time. So it takes a while to build that trust and understanding between the two sides. And but once they have us, we very rarely get kicked out. They start recognizing how much the kids can gain from that process, and that we're actually giving them prompts and math problems and all kinds of things that could connect the two, so that they're continuing to learn about our subjects even after we're gone.
So is it a one-time program, or does it occur over a certain period of time that you go into a classroom?
Most of them are between 6 and 10 weeks. We know from the evidence that the more you go, the more effective you are. So we'll do the one-time things, and sometimes that's all that can happen for a school, but we're really hoping for that 6 to 10 week. Actually, our middle school is an 11-week program, so anywhere between 6 and 11, depending on the programs that they select.
And how many schools are you typically in during a year?
We're in about 69 right now, and that's maybe we're only in one grade, or maybe we're in multiple grades, but what usually happens is we get into one grade, and if we're available for a second group of kids, they usually want us, because even though they're giving up classroom time, it's also giving the teacher some time to maybe, pull kids aside and work with them, or do some paperwork and, bureaucratic stuff that they have to do. So it's helpful for everybody, but we really want that teacher somewhat. They don't have to be 100% paying attention, but we want them, they're there to take care of the discipline, but also we want them to reinforce what we're talking about whenever they see an opportunity, because they're with them the most.
And what counties does InnerAct Alliance cover?
We cover Polk, Highlands, and Hardy, and we kind of negotiate with Tri-County, who has another prevention group. So they typically handle more of the Highlands and Hardy. We do the Hardy High School, and then we do a lot of the Polk County schools. So while we will cover all three, we are primarily in Polk County.
What kind of team of teachers do you have?
We have 10 amazing teachers. Most of them have been with us for over 8 years, some of them as many as 15 or 16. And they either have, they're either certified teachers who've been in the classroom and been in the school system, or sometimes I'll have someone who has been a trainer. So perhaps I had a lady at one time that was a trainer in the Army, and I had somebody at one time that was a DARE officer with a police department. So they don't just have to be educators, but they have to have some sort of education background with their job, their former jobs.
And so the names I see of some of the programs are Keep a Clear Mind for fourth graders, Too Good for Drugs for fifth graders, Project Alert for 6th and 7th grade, and Too Good for Drugs and Violence in 9th grades.
Right. What happened in about 2000 is that the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Authority, which is kind of the federal arm, SAMHSA, it's called fondly, kind of the federal arm of the health realm with the government said, okay, you can't just sit around your kitchen table and decide what you're going to teach your kids. This stuff needs to be evidence-based. And I can't believe that it took till 2000 for that to happen. But that is what happened. And they came up with a national registry of evidence-based prevention programs who've been through that trial and scientific process to prove that it works. And then you select from that list which ones fit your community the best. So, for example, the Too Good for Drugs one was created and used in Tampa. So we know that that's a very similar population to ours. And then Project Alert is typically partially rural, partially small towns and cities. So we tried to match all of the demographics of Polk County when we began choosing them in the 2000s.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Excellent. What are some of your other programs that you have?
Well, we also have our social norms outreach, which we're very proud of. This is our 10th year. I come from a marketing background, so this one gets me, I'm all excited about all of it, but this one really is my thing. When studies were done with kids and surveys, for example, the state of Florida has been doing a survey for over 20 years of our students. So we have rich data about what they think and why they think it. We discovered that most kids think that most kids use. And that's because it's that same clanging bell kind of theory. Is it on Mondays, it's the kid that was out drunk that's talking, right? The other people aren't. So they get this message, and then you add to that what they see on the internet, what they hear in music, what they see on movies and television. And the summation of that is that the perception is that, hey, everybody must be doing it. And when you think everyone is doing it, you're more likely to try it. So what we're doing with social norming is we're giving them the real facts around students in their community, so then they can make a choice. It's always that interaction. It's always that choice that they make themselves, but it's based on fact, not on a misperception. So, for example, 87% of kids in 6th through 12th grade in Polk County do not use marijuana. 84% do not use alcohol. 96% do not use traditional tobacco. However, 88% do not use vaping. So you can see we were doing great. We were down to 4%, and then vaping came along. So now we, have another job to do. But the bottom line is that most kids don't use, right? All of those are still vast majorities. So when a child realizes that and accepts that number, then they're less likely to experiment. We also are teaching parents this at the same time, using a totally different looking campaign, but still the information is the same. Then a parent is more likely to hold the line. They're not going to say, oh, everybody's doing it, because they now have the facts that everybody's not doing it. They're not going to say, oh, it's only tobacco or it's only marijuana, because at the same time we're going to train them that we're talking to them, we're going to train them that, this can lead, they're called a gateway for a reason. It's the entry into harder drugs. So trying to hold that line with their kids as long as possible with illegal and legal drugs to age of onset as far as possible is keeping their kids as safe as possible. So that's kind of the whole premise of social norming. But we can stick it in all kinds of places. That's what's so exciting. A marketing person would say it has legs. We go and talk to parents about it and have a trailer there that shows a mock teenager's bedroom with all the signs and symptoms. But we didn't want to be just doom and gloom and, Chicken Little, that the sky is falling. Then we want to give them strategies of how to combat that and how for that not to be their child's bedroom. With the kids, they get all kinds of prizes around social norms. So it's always fun. So that's something they look forward to. And they walk around with the shirts and these percentages on, and then they're actually the walking advertisement for social norms. Just the fact that they're putting the shirt on is reducing their likelihood of experimenting because they're representing the positive, right? So always trying to turn it on its head is what we're doing.
How do you get to the parents to get them to come?
That's the hard part. The kids are, We go to the cafeteria. They're
right.
in the system, so they're kind of don't have a choice. But they do have a choice in the cafeterias, and it's a feeding frenzy, so they love it. But what we try to do is get to parents through companies. If you have an ability to have us come and do a training, we'll do that. I just went to a church the other night for parents, whether teens were in youth group. We do it at schools, but if you haven't been to a PTA meeting lately, you don't realize it's not the whole cafeteria full anymore. It's a very small handful of people. It doesn't mean we won't come and do our very best, but we really want to get to as many people as possible. So you're also about to see some radio advertising, some television advertising, and some posters and things like that, so that billboards, so that we can just really keep that message going. And hopefully, now that COVID is dying down, we hope, is get back into that into the schools and into the businesses to talk to parents.
Can you talk to us about Stand Up Polk?
Yes.
And the Youth Impact Coalition?
I sure can. A coalition is defined by the feds as it always has to have 12 sectors. So it's law enforcement, educators, parents, kids. I won't go through all 12. But basically you have to have at least one of each person represented at the table. And then what they do is look at the data of your community and see what are the most important problems that we have here. And then taking that data to make an action plan. So they're really starting, especially in the state of Florida, where the state invested for there to be a coalition in every county. They're really looking for the coalition to make movement in the community. And so we formed in 2005. We formed Stand Up Polk, and we decided as a group, and now I'm going to say we because I don't lead this. I'm a member like everybody else. We decided as a group that having one student there at the table around a bunch of adults one evening or lunchtime a month was really not the impact we wanted. So we created Youth Impact. And when I say we, the students did. Everything is teen-led, adult-guided. So they began looking at the data and making decisions. They also learned how to do focus groups so that they could talk peer-to-peer to find out what their peers, thought was important. And we kind of limped along with 5 to 11 members for a few years. And then we decided, and I am going to mention his name because he's now the mayor. We went to Mr. Mutz, who we knew was a leadership proponent, and said, this is what we want to do. And we were talking about a year from now, and he picked up the phone and talked to the superintendent, and we started within 6 weeks. So that was a scramble. But basically, we have now made Youth Impact similar to Leadership Lakeland or Leadership Polk. So we have 2 students from every high school, and they come together, and the first year is a leadership class. They learn about their community, because you can't change your community if you don't know your community. And then at the same time, they're looking at the data around risky behaviors and learning how to do focus groups and creating committees. So those committees are anything from Project Prom, which will be happening each year, February, March, April. And then they also do a lot of the social norming work. They create all of the design work because it has to appeal to their peers, not to old people like me. And so they really work hard in addition to doing their leadership class. Then they have the option to go on to be committee chairs and or executives in the organization. So, we went from 5 to 11 to we now have anywhere from 40 to 75, if you include everyone in the organization, and they're doing all kinds of great work.
It sounds like a great program.
Yes, it is. And by the way, in January of every year, the applications are open for the next class. So if you have a 8th, 9th, or 10th or 11th grader, send them our way. We'd love to see that application.
It sounds like you have a lot of really great programs. Tell us how the community can get involved.
Well, anything from donating prom wear and suits, to donating financially, to getting involved as a volunteer. We need volunteers in the office. We want to keep our teachers in the classroom as much as possible so we can see as many kids as possible. So whatever volunteers can do behind the scenes helps us. We also need matching funds, which includes your time for a lot of our grants. Right now, just for the state of Florida, we're looking at needing about $400,000 match. If you had a service or a business and you could donate some service or product to us, all of that counts. So everybody needs to think outside the box about ways that they can donate. The Red Ribbon Run is our big annual fundraiser, connected with a 1 mile fun run for about 1,500 kids. So you can imagine how many volunteers we need that day. So any way that you can be involved that feels comfortable to you or uses your skill set, we're glad to have them. Also, if you're an older person, we would love to start a mentoring program that involves folks that have that expertise. And you need to get your medicine cabinet empty of anything that could hurt someone. So twice a year, we have a DEA Take Back Day that Stand Up Polk partners with. We really need to get that medicine out of your medicine cabinet.
Well, with Lakeland just being named the 6th most attractive city to retire to, retirees, there's lots of opportunities. If you're a retired case manager, social worker, or just a retiree who's interested in mentoring.
Absolutely.
There are so many opportunities.
Or if you're a handyman, or if you like to do, we could have kids, folks touring the adults through the trailer with that mock bedroom. There's just all kinds of things that folks can do.
If somebody wanted to go through the trailer, how would they be able to do that? Who would they call?
They can call myself or anyone at the office at 802-0777, and we can schedule a presentation and a tour. If it's an individual that just wants to come by the office and check it out, we're glad to do that as well. They just need to call ahead, because sometimes we store it somewhere else. So we want to make sure it's there and available for them when they call.
So a club or a volunteer organization could arrange also to see it.
Absolutely. If you're a parent or someone, you have kids in your lives, which is all of us, then you need to have this information.
And there's also opportunities for college students, I understand.
That's right. We are about to start a college coalition, which will be similar to Youth Impact, but a little bit different. And we're also we're always using, interns, mostly in the fall, but year-round whenever it's possible.
Can you go a little more into the Red Ribbon Run?
Sure.
And how much is raised through that?
Absolutely. I believe in 2021, which we were still iffy because of the COVID situation, we raised about $50,000. That's sponsorships, donations. That doesn't count all the in-kind that we received. It would probably be double or triple of that. But our goal there, the Red Ribbon Run, is the culmination of a whole 6 weeks to a month worth of activities where we really focus on getting that red ribbon out there and on people's lapels. And the whole point is to show that you support prevention and to raise awareness about the importance of prevention. For every dollar spent in prevention, you're saving $3 to $5 in treatment. Not to mention, it's not all about the dollar. Think about all the pain and suffering that a family and a community and an individual goes through when we're looking at addiction. Most addicts take about 7 times going through rehab, which costs around $100,000 each time. And then it either works or it didn't work. That's almost my year's budget, right? So think about trying to prevent that in our community. And I think you would agree that it's important.
And the Red Ribbon Run here is one of the largest in the state.
That's
I
correct.
Understand.
We have almost 1,500 runners. I think it was 1,501 this year. So we broke that little ceiling, and we break them up in age groups and grade level, because you can't let 1,500 children run around Lake Mirror all at the same time. So we run them in heats, and then we also offer a family run. So if you wanted to, if your younger children were in strollers and the whole family wanted to run together, you can do that as well. And it's all about showing support while they're getting messages about prevention. And then we have a lot of partners that come alongside us that day and have all kinds of vending. You can get free toothbrushes and, anything you can connect to health and wellness. They're there, giving away free stuff to about 1,500 families. So it's a really exciting day. We have close to 10,000 people there, close to 300 volunteers that we couldn't live without that day. And it's kind of herding cats, but they're happy cats. And we're super happy and proud that we're able to pull that off every year, which we couldn't do without the city of Lakeland in that beautiful venue.
And it is part of a national campaign, the Red Ribbon Run, correct?
That's correct. In the 80s, it started when a DEA agent was killed, and his family started the Red Ribbon symbol to talk about, let's do prevention instead of having to fight crime, fight the crimes that are happening out there.
Thank you, Angie. And thank you, our audience, for tuning in to Listen Lakeland. Your feedback is valued, and we encourage you to head over to www.lakelandvision.org to participate in our monthly survey related to today's show topic.
Welcome to the good life.
Listen Lakeland is brought to you as a collaborative project between Lakeland Vision, the City of Lakeland, and Hall Communications. Truly a community working together to keep you informed on the many things that make Lakeland such an amazing city. Thank you for being with us.